Kids Comics Unite is a friendly, free community of children's graphic novel creators who are serious about improving their work and building their careers. This month, we're excited to highlight some of our members' crowdfunding campaigns as part of our partnership with crowdfunder.com. Our very own Patrick Lugo will be hosting these streams. Patrick, take it away!
And we're back. Let me just turn off this overlay. But I guess that's a useful indication of who we have joining us today. Hello, all. This is the third of 3 live streams we've had this week. Some really exciting conversations, and I'm glad that we have a couple of viewers and hopefully more to come joining us for this third live stream. As you saw in the graphic, we have a special guest joining us today. She is a Chinese-Canadian fine artist, children's book illustrator, and now graphic novelist, Shirley V. Ting. Welcome to the Kids Comics Unite live stream spotlights.
Hello,
How
Patrick.
are you?
Hi, Patrick. I'm good. Thank you for having this space to connect with other kids comics people, because I've kind of dropped out for a year while working on a different graphic novel. But it's great to connect with everyone and participate in the crowdfunding.
Oh yeah, it's been crazy times. Lots of things are changing in publishing and in comics. And I was just taking a look at your website where I did notice a certain other graphic novel, which really did pique my curiosity. I was excited to see it. So, but first, let me share with the folks an example of your work, which I discovered on your Illustrator page here, which I was happy to find. But why don't you fill me in on a little bit of an origin story about yourself and your work, and mostly yourself as we go into things. But let's start with like the classic secret origin.
Oh, okay. My secret origin, and just so you know, I'm also wearing my secret identity. So, but my secret origin, I have a background in architecture and in architecture practice and project management, and I started drawing. Uh, I was thinking of doing children's illustration 10 years ago, because I've always drawn cartoons, and per my bio, I'm actually a Disney comic and cartoon fan. It's something that's constant in my life, and I thought I'd like to do that going forward, as as a stress reliever. And then the pandemic happened, and then I started writing, because that's the most productive lockdown activity. And so now I'm a new entry to children's illustration. So I'm still working on that and building up my portfolio. And because I was writing, I've accidentally stumbled into graphic novel. I've always read comics. I just never thought I'd write it and do it, just because of the amount of work and the actual writing. Like, telling a story is like uh, you know a big adventure on its own. And so I ended up starting to write graphic novel, and this one that you're showing is the one project I'm working on, that I'm cleaning up, wrapping up to set up for a package. And then the one that I'm running for a campaign, the Evil Sidekick Mission, is the one I'm gonna start prepping to package for next year. But I have the script ready, and I've transitioned that from prose to graphic novel. And I think graphic novel there's a stronger pull in graphic novel than writing, because I like to draw, and it's just like amazing, the world building, the drawing, just the potential of other ways to communicate. And yeah, so that's my origin, and I've been with kids comic for since 2021, but I'm like on and off just because you pass out when you're working on some like intense research and processing, right? So
Oh yeah, yeah, and I mean it's been like I mentioned earlier, it's been very dynamic times for creators, right? Everyone's trying to do a bunch of different things, getting published by the big 2.5 publishers, or trying to do their own little independent comic,
yes,
or getting stuff online, a web comic. I know we mentioned that you had some interest on that, so let's talk. We can touch on that in a moment, but we're here to talk about crowdfunding, right?
yes,
Because we've
yes,
all kind of jumped onto this new platform, which if for those few people who have not heard, right, it's crowdfunder.com. And for anyone who's curious, right, we can look at this URL happens to belong to you. Your particular custom store, that not store, custom campaign front for what you're doing in on Crowdfunder, which I have here. I just need to find the right screen to share it. Um, that's the beauty of live, right? I can have my mistakes just for all to share with.
and it shows your like abilities to pivot right away, right?
Kind of, it's like part of the practice, right? Is
Yes.
like I like to describe it as juggling axes, and hopefully not there's not one that falls straight on the head. But in the meantime, we have here two. I still have to work out that right and left, right? But right there, we're looking at your crowdfunder page. So before, well, why don't you? I'm gonna adjust. We have a lot of clutter on our screen right now, so I'm gonna clean that up, and maybe you can start with letting us know how you moved from the Dragon to Pearl graphic novel project to your comic development Sidekick Mission, because it just seems like such an interesting arc that you're pursuing right now. So
Yes, I was told that they're completely different because there's the big difference from comedy and then the other one is about historical fiction and about migration, perseverance, and like life. So actually the both projects did start out almost at the same time, except um, Dragon to Pearl was a picture book, and when I was working on it, I thought, this looks like it's too long of a story for a picture book. And it might be something I should think about as a like a middle grade or chapter book or longer version. And I happened to receive a scholarship for a graphic novel class. And like I said, it was the pandemic, and I was like, you know what? I'm just waiting for the meteor to fall. So I'm like, okay, the meteor is coming. It's the end of the world for sure. So I'm just gonna jump in, and then signed up for applied for a scholarship for a graphic novel, and then I received it. And for the summer of 2021, I worked on uh, a couple of pages, learned how to make graphic novels, and then I realized, oh, I could draw longer than the one off that I'm used to drawing, because I would always draw during my downtime. I would always draw my birthday cards and Chinese New Year cards and Christmas cards, and now I'm able to do longer. So I'm like, I kept going at it, and I had a critique group that liked it, and I continued that project. At the same time, I was also working on Sidekick, Evil Sidekick Mission, which originally is titled Camp Eviler. So that was an exercise for writing. It's a writing class exercise about kids going to camp, and I didn't grow up in North America, so I had no idea how camp is. And then I'm like, I'm not gonna write about camp, it's gonna be so boring. So I decided to lean on the things I like at that age, like 9, 10, and then I leaned on my comics liking with, and then the cartoons, and then I wrote that as a chapter book. And it became it. I just couldn't write chapter book because it had to be simpler, and it became a middle grade prose exercise. So I was working in parallel developing my first graphic novel, which is Dragon to Pearl, that historical fiction. And I would work on Camp Evil I'm sorry, Evil Sidekick Mission, um, on and off, and especially during October, because it's Halloween. It's Halloween, so it's monsters and that stuff. So it's like, and I discovered in 2021 that I could not finish the initial pages for Evil Sidekick Mission because I just got really bored writing because I wanted to draw. So and that's when, like, I would be showing, I this the video I sent you are samples of the sketches I did during October 2021. And I had the understanding that middle grade had a lot of drawings. And then after a while, after joining SCWBI, learning that, oh, not all middle grades have drawings. Well, I'm leaving. So there's no drawing. Forget it. Sayonara. Um, so I just shelved it, and then went back to Dragon to Pearl and kept going. And I received Canada Council for the Arts grant to develop the graphic novel for Dragon to Pearl. And so I'm like, this is great. So I was able to connect with the wider graphic novel community and get like proper mentorship and consultation to keep developing it. And then I realized, oh, I could actually do this. And while I was developing that since last year, and then you realize, oh my God, I'm growing up, I'm being an adult, I'm adulting properly this time. Yay. Right. So
Yes, exactly. You get surprised by the incremental changes, and then all of a sudden you look behind you and you've made this progress, X amount
yes,
of progress.
yes. And so, like, it was always one after the other, and it was great because the other one's a little bit more heavy, serious, and the other and Evil Sidekick Mission is just well, not pure comedy. There's some lessons in it, but it's comedic and it's a nice break. So if you can't run out of ideas on one, or you can't write yourself out of it, go back to the other one. Um,
That's right there is some very good creative feedback advice, right? Like if you get stuck on one front, go and shift gears and try a different thing. Is that something that you've because you've done fine arts and you've been recognized on that front as well, is that something that working in the fine art arena has taught you that you've been able to bring over to illustration and the more
um,
kidlit, like the friendly, more impulsive children's work?
I think even when I was doing fine arts, it was more illustrative style. So I would draw
Mhm.
children, and I would draw like having fun. Like, I wasn't drawing just landscape, and then my landscape wouldn't be just another copy of something I see in front. I wanted a different landscape. So it was always like creating a world, and it was always escapism, and then it's my world. And then like when you said where you move in from one project to another, just like to slide, if you get stuck you move to the other one to push it along. And that's how it is with work. Like, if you're stuck, you can't just stare there and be upset. You gotta try to be productive. And that's how you find your creativity, and that's how you realize you're creative. You design yourself out of that problem in a way, by doing something, engaging yourself, and then you realize, oh, I've got the solution for the other one. And
Yeah,
then
you create like some flow and everything else starts to moving. That's really exciting. But I have that video of some of the work that you shared, which I'm excited to share with our viewers. So I'm gonna press play on that. But if I recall correctly, I don't believe there's audio.
no, there's no audio. So these
Okay,
were the sketches I used to keep me going in 2021, to keep
okay,
writing.
so I have it here. I'm gonna play, and then we can try, and then perhaps you can do a little bit of voiceover to let folks know, like, what they're seeing.
Yes.
But first, I'm gonna switch banners because right now we've been sharing your illustration site for anyone who's curious about your broader scope of your projects. But let's switch that one over to your crowdfunder site so that people can, because the video we're about to share is intimately connected with the
Yes.
crowdfunder project, right? So we want to create the whole package for folks to experience. And so without further ado, let's press play.
So this is it's a little bit fast, but these are the first 3 to 4 chapters. So getting to know the sidekicks, and they meet each other in camp, and you see their personalities. And I use the sketches to understand how they would be talking to each other. So, and that helped me keep going and understand their dynamics. And it's also made me realize if I want them to keep living in my imagination and share it. And I like how my characters are fallible, so they're imperfect, and they're all there to be evil, making choices to, and then these are quick. Yeah, so those were like just the quick sketches, and I did it throughout October in 2021.
They're adorable, and that's like that's a really excellent example of visual world building that's going on, right? Because it's not what we saw there wasn't necessarily the finished art that will be on a specific page. It's more like a glimpse of the world
Yes.
that you're crafting. And from what you've told me about it, it sounds really adorable. We have our head young vampire who's got artificial fangs. Am I
Yes.
am I remembering that
Yes.
correctly?
Yes. Fang
And
dentures. So
fang
spoiler
and
alert, he's got fang dentures.
and that's him looming above you in the
Yes.
screen,
Yes.
right? Celebrating Canada Day, if I recall correctly.
Correct. I figured I should lean on the red, the liking red, and then I'm in Canada. So my sidekicks are Canadian, and then I launched a few days before Canada Day. So
That's excellent. I mean, we've been taught when we talk about crowdfunding, we're always talking about like when to launch and what days work, and like here in the States, there was this big consideration of who was willing to launch at the very beginning of July because we had the July 4th Independence Day, or who was going to wait and launch after that because everyone was outside barbecuing and blowing things up. No one's going to, press click on the support button
yes.
for a campaign. But I imagine Canada Day would be a little bit more friendly towards like the option for people to support.
Maybe, but I just really wanted to use all the red at that time. I'm like, it was the perfect sketch to share and try.
Oh, I totally agree. And we're not alone because we've got a comment from Ashley and Jeff. Hello, who they think your style is so cute.
Thank you.
So and I agree. There's just such a it's like I get the sense that these cat sidekicks are bad at being bad, and that's
Yes.
part of the humor that's going on behind your project.
Yes, but they're very serious about pursuing their goal to be evil sidekicks or sidekicks.
They are determined to be really good at being
Yes.
bad.
Yeah, because and then the whole like the basis is like they're trying to live up to expectations, and then they figure out what degree of bad they can do or what's acceptable to them. And I think that's something we all struggle with at a young age. I'm like, I really just want to, be mean towards that person, and then okay, fine, and then you talk yourself out of it, but you're like, you know what, I just really want to be mean. So I think that's an interesting moment in one's life.
Oh, I agree. And so here we are back at your campaign page. And what I'm seeing here is that you've got 7 contributors. That's great, and you have 38 days left. So
Yes.
you're really have a lot of space to build interest, right? And one of the things that we talked about was how, especially through crowdfunder, but there's the option to build your audience by the, through crowdfunder and through the crowdfunder community. And one of the ways is by getting your project out there. So here it says, right? Help Drake live his best evil sidekick life at Camp Evil and uncover his destiny. And here we have a lovely black and white piece. Are you thinking of doing this finished? Will the finished project be a black and white, full color, black, white, and red? Have you
For
given?
now, I was thinking of black and white, but like as you keep developing it, I'm like, oh, but then I wanted this my characters, especially Drake, to always be attached to red, and I'm like, oh my god. And then their headmaster or their instructor is a Sasquatch, like Yeti that has yellow Wellingtons, and I specifically had that as a character design, and I'm like, oh, it might be black and white with splashes of certain colors. So that's the whole like, well, I guess that'll be a later decision how fun it will be or not, but
Right, and
predominantly black and
it's
white.
also a decision that could be made collectively with, those backers who are a part of the campaign, right?
Yes.
Because like, many come to a crowdfunding event to like with a finished product. I just want to have the money to pay to print the project, but you're taking a more integrative approach where you're like actually inviting people to be a part of your artistic journey while you develop this project, which I think is really an exciting and unique approach.
Yeah, I'm actually, yeah, the other reasons I wanted to find audience because I was informed that when you do webcomic, sometimes there's the exciting part for the creator where your audience talks to you, and then you know how as a creator you create, but then sometimes your creation becomes sentient on its own, right? Because you gave them all these attributes and personalities, and then like, I guess it's like you let them become their own children or like grow up and adult that mature as a product. And yeah, for me, I was like, well, I am developing like a graphic novel package. I'm also planning to do a web comic because I think that's for at least for as to continue creating, right? Because sometimes you don't know where a project will go, but if you enjoy the creation, it could help create, like, lead to more stories, and then your stories gets better and deeper. And then I've always loved Calvin and Hobbes, and so I thought, that would be so fun to just have like the four strip and then just have a little laugh. And and then the webcomic platforms are available free, and the audience could engage, and then they come in and have their bi-weekly comic strips.
Agreed. And it's not just people often think that like when they say web comics they're confined to just tapas or webtoons, but just like with crowdfunding, right? Just like how crowdfunding is not just Kickstarter, web comics is not just webtoons, beyond tapas there's global comics. And I mean, I think that there's a way that, considering how crowdfunder works in terms of like backers being able to be very intimately connected with the project, I wonder if it could be a platform for a web comic
Yeah,
itself.
that would be interesting, right? And I think I saw it on Kids Comic on our board. Someone was asking about web comic platform, and I was looking at like you said, tapas and webtoon. I'm like, oh my god, what if these are mostly YA? How about if your market is the younger kids, like above Dogman, above Baby Mouse? They need a like, a safe environment for like this age group. And I'm like, oh, I either have to do my own website, and then the people just go in there. So there's the webcom, because other people have done that. Their webcomic
Yes.
for middle grade level, they just make their own website and upload from there, and people could just scroll through it, because there's that
Right.
whole safety involved and like exposure, and then how do you engage the parent
Oh,
and the child.
That
Right.
is definitely a very significant consideration.
Yes.
And whereas, like, you know, that's the one of the advantages of when you have your own website, right? You're building your own credibility, and you're accountable to yourself, but then those people who visit, those people who comment, right? Like, they're comment because they're coming to you. It's not
Mhm.
just, because of a random algorithm that you have no control over. That's not just because, the platform just randomly decided that, okay, for Canada Day, they're going to spotlight all comics that have red artwork in it.
Yes.
Like, if you're doing that on your website, that's great because that's your choice, right? And you could, like, control how you want your audience to see that. But then when you're putting your web comics out onto someone else's platform, on these bigger platforms, it's just like how San Diego Comic-Con is happening this week in California. And so all the comic book industry professionals are, like, putting out their press releases and, their announcements, and this thing is happening and that thing is happening. But no one particular announcement is going to stand up in all of that noise. So sometimes it's the same way with web comics, where you've got to find a way to make your particular project stand out.
Yes.
And sometimes it's the choice of, like, subject matter, right? The project you're working on, and sometimes it's the choice of platform. And so look at these lovely pieces. A and G. Can you tell me a little bit about these? These look like process pieces, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, G is like a sketch study, and because I work in traditional and digital, like sometimes I try both when I make a study, just to see what can I do with the other one. Do I replicate? Do I make it its own identity because of whatever is available there? And uh, if I work at the same amount of time, what comes out? So that's for the G, for the girl. And for the A section, those are picture book sketches, and I have dummies for them. The other one is called Halo's Quest, and it's about a child imagining needing to conquer this dragon with his turtle steed, but in reality, it's a child wanting, like, how he goes, who's bored doing his chores, and then he's making his chores an adventure. So,
That's delightful.
and the other one is called those are like gingerbread samples of McDonald's, KFC, but I kind of adjusted it just for no trademark issues. So, and then the Pillsbury Doughboy, and it's for a picture book called Muffin Wants to Be a Cake, and it's basically an idea of about you want something what the other person has, when in fact, if you choose what to put inside yourself, you understand that you're also wonderful. The other you also shine with, but you can make
These
choices too.
Those are very adorable and exciting. I mean, the messages are beautiful and just, exciting pieces. Look at this another piece from Camp Evil.
Yeah, so this is the camp, and I thought that would be fun, where the kids go to camp, but it's actually a castle complex. And I was very invested in writing because I could describe the spaces. And then when, like, initially we were talking how I changed from prose to graphic novels, people were saying the way I wrote was very visual, and why not move to graphic novel because you draw? And I'm like, okay, if I can build my ability, I will do it. And then so I took a year and a half to gradually see if I can, draw so many panels and keep going. So I can. So I've done my other graphic novel. I have more than 50 pages. I'm like 60 sketches already, and then thumbnails. So I'm like, oh, okay, I can survive. I can manage.
That's
And then
that's That's another excellent observation, because a lot of people, like a common piece of advice that's given for folks who are starting out, it's been given to me, is if you want to break into comics, make comics, but start small, right? Like a small 12-page zine or an 8-page zine, just to kind of learn your basics and learn a key skill, which is you understanding your own stamina. How much artwork can you generate within a window of time?
Yes.
And that's a thing that I think a lot of especially a lot of unseasoned artists rely on their youthful vigor and their
Yeah.
passion, and then, which is great at first, but that stuff runs out, and then
Mhm.
you have to either have discipline or technique, or like understanding of how much work you can do at any given moment.
Yeah. And plus, like you said, you start small, and I've been told that you can even make a full story in 6 pages if you're like able to make a little story, which is true, right? And we see that in the comic strips, the 4 panel, and it's just straightforward, and there's no
Yeah,
need
the
for that.
the 4 panel. I mean, a story. I often think about like whether or not a story can be told in just one image, right? And that's always like the ongoing. I mean, like here's an example of a story being told in one image. That's it's a cartoon, but it's not necessarily comics, because comics is about that sequence of images that string together to create understanding.
Mhm.
But it's just part of a bigger, like a part of a bigger like dictionary of language, right? Like the more comics that you do, the more ways you figure out how to do things,
Yes.
and what's always interesting, because even a good artist is good, but then they're always improving, right? And you see these evolutions, and some of it might just be in technique, like how to draw better fangs or whatever, but some of it is also just like the how to tell a better story with more efficiency.
Yes. Oh, and I actually loaded my first 5 pages of my graphic novel
Oh,
in my
excellent.
site, so I don't know if you can get that, but
So
or
where would I
it's
find it? Is it
it
on
should
the
it would be at the bottom if you go to the actual site.
of the crowdfunder page,
Yes,
or your
the crowdfunder page.
okay, so if we keep following the story down,
But this isn't new. Are you on the
let
live
me
page?
let me see. Maybe it needs a refresh.
Yeah,
How do
it's
I
live now, right? Because I have an update. So at the very bottom, you'll see the first 5 pages of the graphic novel.
are these them right here?
Yes.
All right, that's yeah, I needed to do a refresh, and here they are.
So
I'm
there's
loving
still a
so
little it's a bit sketchy just because these were my sketches, and the decision to do it, like, okay, I'm gonna go graphic novel, was in May after I attended a conference. And then I got the email to crowdfund, and I wasn't sure. And like, I guess, like I said, I would always do increments. So I filled in all the forms, and once you need to push the button, I'm like, okay, I got enough, I'll push the button. And then let's see what happens. Because if I don't do it, nothing's gonna happen.
No, that's an excellent point. And interestingly enough, that was something that we were talking about yesterday, about like sometimes finished is more important than perfect, right?
Yes.
And how like the willingness to get the stuff out there and then learn from any mistakes, rather than like holding a project back until you're 100% sure there are no mistakes. And there's just like, I mean, I don't know if one is necessarily right versus the other one. I think, it depends, right? Some projects need to be perfect from the word go, but other projects can benefit from just, getting the work out there, so that people, so you can excite people, you can meet new people, you can like build your audience
Yes.
and generate that interest. Because, I mean, look, it's in the energy of this artwork that really conveys why someone would enjoy it. It's like the personality of the characters. it's it's the humor, both visual and written. And you know what, these pages are highly colorable, right? So even if you were to print them in black and white, you could print it comic book size, or you could print it as like an oversized magazine
Uh-huh.
that a young person can color in, like it's got that feel. And the beauty of crowdfunding, right, is that you can offer either. You can offer it in multiple formats and let your audience decide what they want from
Actually,
it.
I'm glad you pointed that out, Patrick, because like I mentioned to you before, that one of the reasons when my character designs, I made sure I wanted the children to be attracted to them, to want to draw them, because I want them to keep reading. So because I guess this also goes back to my own experience reading comics. I'm like, I was telling someone, my first comic was Silver Surfer, an old Silver Surfer of my uncle's. When he was like, we learn about Silver Surfer, and he was made by Galactus to find
Yes.
the world to eat. And I remember seeing the Silver Surfer in that surfboard, and I'm like, what is that white thing? And it's so shiny. And I couldn't read back then. Like I was like 5, 6. I couldn't read. I didn't understand. Oh, there's so many words, but I kept flipping through the pictures and I was so fascinated. And then because of my attraction to the drawings, whenever I went to my uncle's and he has all his comics littered, I would just flip through it. And then I wasn't born in North America, and so English isn't my first language, and I was learning. So it wasn't some, and it helped me be interested to learn English, because therefore I'll read this comic someday. I will read whatever those words are, but in the meantime, I'm gonna read the pictures and also the X-Men. I think when Jean Grey was brought into the Xavier, so I was like, and then I'm like, you know what? I think I read Snoopy and Garfield. Like my aunts had all these other cartoons, and I just would stare at them and draw them. And I thought, that's something I want to bring into this project. So the kids would like, I want to draw this. I don't know what the words are, but I'm gonna learn the words later. Let me see through the pages. And the other thing is, I wanted to introduce vocabulary, like bigger vocabulary. And now I want to try and draw them so the kids will learn those vocabularies and they'll remember it later. I don't.
That's That's so fantastic, and I really appreciate that because that reflects a lot of my own early experiences. I had older brothers, so I had more access to hand-me-down comic books as a child than I did have to actual children's book or early reader books. So I would sit there, on my father's lap, and he would kind of read the comics to me, and so that's how I would learn to read. And then the fact that the words had the pictures helped, describe Peter Parker's falling, and you see him falling off the building, or whatever, right? That the words and the pictures reinforced each other to help create that understanding. And then along the way, you start picking up some of the more melodramatic words that the comic writers just put in there for the sake of the characters. But then I know I would find myself trying those words out in the playground or
Yes.
whatever, and they
Yeah.
would just add to my vocabulary. And I think that's just an essential thing. And it was always strange how there was a point where comics stopped being for kids, right? And they became very obsessed with like mature content and like mainstream acceptance. And now comics had grown up. And it's so great now to see that comics, have gone full circle and they are for kids again. And they're specifically being used in the way that you described. Let's create comics for people who are just now learning how to read and, structure the language that's being used, the art that's being used to help, like spark that fire and
Yes.
spark that interest in reading.
Yeah, because it's really important to read. I have friends who don't like reading and they're uninformed. They just get whatever news from someone else for gossip and they don't want to read the news. And so the conversation is just different, and you realize, sometimes reading can be boring, but it's good to have the practice to read, understand, and then therefore you can make your own conclusions and search for
100%.
information. Yeah, and that's why I'm like, I I appreciate being able to read so many things. That way I won't be easily, hopefully not easily deluded, but like have more proper decision making process in my life.
Oh yeah, and then just I think that process that happens where you're like looking at the picture and reading the words, and you're looking at multiple pictures, so it's not just one image, it's multiple image that you're assembling, and then the story comes from all of those different pieces. I mean, I think being able to do that in one's head is a valuable skill
Yes.
that makes that you just make that you can carry and apply to more than just reading comics. And I think it's evident in like a newer, more literate generation of readers than say like, the schoolyard pranks I grew up with, where, being fine, like, having comics in your backpack could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on where you were in the schoolyard.
Yes.
Whereas now it's just so universal. Even in the States, manga is just so easy to find. The comics that you go to a comic shop or one kind of comic, but there's still, the stuff being published by Scholastic and First Second that you can find anywhere. The fact that libraries now have comic sections, that's just all
Fantastic.
that's great. And then the thing is that it helps inspire like in the same way that when we were young we were inspired by these comics, now that access to more comics makes it easier for the next generation of artists to find a style that they can jive with. They don't all have to draw Silver Surfer the way Jack Kirby drew Silver Surfer. They could draw your young vampire boy instead.
Yes, a little bit more like age ability related, because drawing the real human figure is tricky for when you're very young.
Extreme. I mean, it's still difficult, and I'm an adult, but I'm still trying. But so let's look at some of your perks and rewards that you have on offer. So here's an exciting one: a webinar session showing the process. Could you elaborate on how that would work if someone wanted to support you at that level?
Yeah, so the initial contribution is $5, and that automatically has that webinar session, so I can show you where I started and how it ended in terms of how I came up with the sketch idea, why I changed my mind, and then why I chose this look. And it's also, I was hoping to show like how you make the four panel comic strip. And another one is I do a lot of you can as in my website, I do painterly work. So I also do a lot of like I record my process and explain how I use certain tools, and then I also show the progression. So that's one thing. And then if they want another one, they can purchase another one. Um, and what I would be showing would be how I've transferred from script to a drawn way, and then how you kind of end up, why you chose to make this decision to remove certain words, and how you and utilize the visual. Like I'm not the expert, but I will show you the struggle. So
Oh, I mean, that's such
that's
a
important.
valuable thing to witness, because I think a lot of people get trapped by the concept that there is a specific way to do it. And with comics in particular, just whatever way gets it done. If you're using magic marker and stapling them yourself, then that's how it's being done. If you're sending your digital files to a printer, like whichever way, it's only because you have like a Marvel Comics or a DC Comics, where they want the assembly line and they want everyone to be able to fit into that process, right? That's why they want a system that's repeatable. But for an individual artist such as yourself, right, it's extremely valuable to be able to like witness that this unique project is coming from a unique voice, and then it's being created in a unique way, right? Like the work reflects the artist and it reflects the process.
Yeah, and I think when you look at when in a shared experience with other people, when you figure out their struggle and you realize how they struggle, sometimes it helps you in the long run, because you might stumble in that same point and you realize, why am I overthinking? I just saw it. Maybe I could parallel how that person came about their problem solving.
Right. And this is, it's so amazing. I mean, this is what I've been loving about these live streams and these conversations, because it's like each person that I've had the chance to have a conversation with, very different in their approach and what they're creating, and why they're creating it. And yet there are so many commonalities in terms of like the internal drive and the willingness to like offer something that's really unique. We had one project where you can have it was Lock and Dock, right? And it was the adventures of a young boy and his talking teddy bear. They figured out crimes. But one of the features that project had was that you can have your own plushie included in the story, right? Totally unique approach to like that interaction, And then another backer is making is doing a similar thing as you were doing, where you're having a workshop. He's doing one-on-one calls because he's a writer, so he wants to share his writer and his editing expertise in the same way that you're sharing your artistic expertise and your ability to like reverse engineer your own projects or your own process, which is a very key skill for any creative to have.
Yeah. Like I know a lot of people are doing the books and samples, but I'm in Canada and shipping is just horrible. And I'm like, I don't want to pass it on to a backer. Forget that. I'm like, it's like more expensive than the actual book, and it's illogical. So unfortunately, even we're so close, it makes commerce has made it hard for us to, profit from each other. So
Yeah, it's like the new challenge. Like it's the new challenge that has come along with the new access, right? We all have more access to online services, to print on demand, etc. But that whole postage situation is like is the part that offsets the gain. We
yes,
got the gain of this extra access, and then we pay for it in shipping. So it's up to creative people like yourself to find these workarounds, and
yes,
having like digital content is so helpful now, and then having like that interactivity that does that, it can transcend borders, right? Because the value of a one-on-one call is going to transcend the price of like getting a book, mailed to you. It's going to be like insight that you won't even know until after you've had that conversation.
hmm And the
And then,
other perk was brochure, a Camp Eviler brochure. So it'll be like you getting the class schedule if you attend, and then you'll have the brochure. And in the brochure are 3 comic strips. And I thought that would be good because I don't want to redo it, because it'll be like a comic strip and you'll find out about all the other evil sidekicks. And I have been thinking of doing another uh reward where it'll be 5 postcards of the spaces in the camp, but I just didn't want to commit right now until I confirm that of my other space, because they're taking classes. They have a full schedule for 1 week, and I'll be bringing them to different study halls or spaces, and those are unique. So I'm excited to share that, but I need to confirm a couple more rooms before I put that in.
I
So it'll
mean,
be an update.
I'm just like tickled by the idea of that level of immersiveness, because this is just the start of something, like a year from now we could be discussing the plushies that are being developed for Camp Eviler, or it could be an activity book, right? Like right now we're just at the most, ground floor of that castle that you've got built up.
Yeah, so hopefully it's like you want to go to Camp Eviler and be an evil sidekick or find your sidekick destiny. So,
Right? Or anyone who enjoyed the Wednesday Addams show on Netflix this this past spring, right? Would
yes,
this seems to fit exactly in with that same feel, that same vibe.
yeah,
So is this the trifold comic strip you
yes,
were mentioning, the
yes.
brochure?
And there's a video of this with sound effects on the top. So I put in the sound, but the sound effects doesn't come with the brochure, just so you
I
know. So it just opens, and if you want the sound effects, you have to do it yourself. Um,
More interactivity, right? This is like ideal for like, you know, get this project so that you could be the cool aunt or uncle, right? When it's time to visit the nephews and nieces.
yes. So basically, my main goal is to find audience, and I'm at 16%, and like you said, I still have more than a month. But if it doesn't go through because it's all or nothing, I do have a link for a newsletter sign up because I still want to know who's interested, and I like to update people. And then if if I end up opening my own website just for the web comic instead of going to Tapas and Webtoon, at least there's a space to there's a way to keep in touch.
That's fantastic. And I love the way that you're thinking about whole campaign in the sense of like it's rather than it being a win or lose proposition, what you've created is a win or a win proposition, right? You will win when the project gets funded, and that everyone will win. But
Yes.
then if the project doesn't get funded, you will still win because you're building this network of people who are interested. And it costs nothing to subscribe. It costs nothing to just go over to this website right down there and just drop an email to help just be a part of this process. And then this way, because the updating, like you're already in the habit of sharing your insights and sharing your process. So people are going to benefit from that regardless of the ultimate fate of this project.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great, and I think that's like kind of a first amongst the campaigns that we've spotlighted. Your campaign is unique in that sense of like, you know come to Camp Eviler because it's gonna be fun there.
Yeah. So hopefully someone's interested enough. So that will be good to know if my project premise works too.
Yeah, and then also it might, like it's early enough that the potential can still surface, right? That a new
Yes.
project can be born, from it as it evolves.
Yes.
And yeah, that's really exciting. And you know, we have this live stream now, but then this will be available on YouTube as a replay where anyone can look at it and share it. And there are people who are subscribed who may not be here live, but they'll see it later. So that's kind of a fun thing. So in the
Yeah.
meantime, folks should head straight over to this URL to check out the development of Camp Eviler.
So, but it's Evil Sidekick Mission. That's the title.
Evil.
Because Evil Sidekick Mission. Because if there is a book 2 or book 3, we're gonna go to the world of color during Christmas, and then book 3 will be a different thing. So hopefully I can learn how to write those. But for now, this is like getting the evil superpower. So at least understanding how mean do you want to be? Do you really want to be mean? And it's just like learning about yourself and expectations.
That's excellent. And we haven't even touched on the whole purpose of sidekicks, of your
Yes.
choice to make the sidekicks the main characters.
Yes. Do you have any thoughts? Because I just realized you have superheroes, so you might want to engage Shirley. Your Lucy is a superhero, and I'm like, Shirley, why are you using a sidekick? So
I love the concept. Like in my project, Lucy, she ends up acquiring a sidekick of her own, but it's like it's a young alien that crash lands on her planet, and so they end up working together. It's pretty funny, but I mean, sidekicks have such a deep history, right? Since Robin, since who was the guy who would follow around Don Quixote? I'm totally forgetting his name.
Pancho.
Yes, exactly. So there's like such a deep tradition. Thank you for helping me out on that one. So there's
Yes.
such a deep traditions, sidekicks have needed their time in the spotlight.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong about being, the first rate version of a sidekick and learning how to follow. And let me bring into that whole business concept of, or at least team building concept of form, storm, norm, and perform. So this will be a book about them forming, storming, so they'll have their issues. And we all go through that when we're in a team. And I think maybe at least when I was growing up, I was never taught how to have a proper conversation and just say, I'm not happy. So we don't establish proper boundaries and have the right words. And I hope here, if they're having issues, they'll be like, I'm not happy how you're treating me, but I'll just do this and then move on. They can say, this is the limit of my ability. And then, I think
That's
sometimes we need to learn to find the right words early, because sometimes we speed through life and we're just like, shoot. And, if you speak up, you're the problem. But when in fact, sometimes you need to speak up to protect others who are too afraid to speak up and be seen as a problem.
that's amazing. That's such a fantastic, well thought out vision, to have it's a comic, but then there's also these valuable lessons. And I'm so glad we were able to talk about that, because those insights are key. Those are like sound bites I want to download and edit and share so that
Yeah,
people
but
know.
sidekicks help the world. Like help the heroes. Sometimes the heroes can't always be there, and we know that, right? The heroes are one, but sidekicks, they can be so many of us.
Yeah, and every hero needs a kick in the pants once in a while,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like Robin will be like, Batman, that's wrong. And then as if you're a good sidekick, you'll speak up and say, hero, I think you have a problem right now. You need to reflect. So
It's way past your bedtime, Batman.
yes.
Take a nap. That's excellent. Well, this has been a lot of fun. We're kind of coming to the close of our hour, and
Hmm.
it feels like we just got started. We just started talking about sidekicks. We could spend another hour just really going into the details of what makes a good sidekick and who was the original. Is there a sidekick that predates Pancho Villa?
Maybe that's something kids comic could have, like a panel, since you guys, we have a lot of fun, interesting panels coming up all the time.
That's true, and we have a lot of creators who specialize in like the classics and in doing the deep research. So maybe there's like maybe there was a sidekick in Greek mythology that we're not thinking about just yet. So we'll have to. That I'm
Hey,
trying
aren't
to
the
think.
apostles sidekicks? Jesus is sidekicks.
I'm also thinking of like a Journey to the West. Was the Monkey King
Yes,
kind of forced into being a sidekick at
yes,
that point, and he
yes,
probably hated every second of it.
yeah, that's true. The hero became the sidekick and he dealt with it, and he's still a hero.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. What a soundbite to end on, right? That was fantastic. Shirley, this has been really fun. I'm so glad we've had a chance to talk. I'm gonna share your website one more time. So I want folks to look at the crowdfunder campaign, support for the chance to look at an artistic process, support for the chance to keep your finger on the pulse of this evolving project, and then go to your illustration website to check out at least one cool dragon that I found there. I have a soft spot for dragons, so I can't
Oh,
help
I
but
love
noticing.
making dragons and castles.
Oh, excellent. Well, we'll have to talk more about both of those at a future date.
Yes. Thank you for this opportunity. And it's great that we have Kids Comic Unite to like tap on information and connect with people.
Oh yeah, I mean, Kids Comics Unite has been special for all of us. So what I'm gonna do now, right, to we usually close out our show with a couple of short videos, including
Mhm.
our closing bumper.
Yes.
But the first one I want to play is your countdown, is your great little slideshow, so folks can have one more reason to, you know, support your campaign. I just want to find, there it is. I have too many buttons that I need to press, but we do what we can. So hold on
You're
one
my
sec.
hero today, Patrick. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, you're the best sidekick I've had all day.
Thank you. That was my purpose today.
Excellent. Okay, so you just wait right there, folks. Give a one more final look-see to this delightful slideshow.